Rachel Reeves acaba de sufrir la meilleure humiliation de su carrera. Y lo más preocupante es que no proveen de la oposición ni de un escándalo político menor. No. La advertencia más devastadora ha legado desde el mismísimo Banco de Inglaterra, la institución encargada de mantener la estabilidad económica del país. Un mensaje sin precedentes que, en esencia, deja en claro algo demolida. No confían en su liderazgo. No es una simple crítica, ni una sugerencia de cambio de rumbo. Es una señal de alarma en toda regla. Los expertos financieros han hablado y el mensaje es rotundo. Rachel Reeves está conduciendo la economía británica hacia el desastre. Y lo peor de todo es que Keir Starmer sigue protegiéndola. Pese a las advertencias de los mercados, pese a la creciente presión política y pese al caos financiero que se está desplegando ante nuestros ojos, el líder laborista se aferra a su Chancellor como si su supervivencia dependiera de ello. Por Q está defendiendo con tanto ahínco. Q se Reeves Q hace Q Starmer prefiere hundirse con ella antes Q reconoce su error. La gran pregunta es, estamos ante una crisis que podría no solo derribar a Reeves, sino a todo el gobierno laborista? Cuando Reeves asumió el cargo, lo hizo con promesas grandilocuentes. Aseguró que el Partido Laborista traería estabilidad, que su liderazgo económico acabaría con el letargo financiero en el que el Reino Unido había estado sumido durante años. Dijo que su estrategia acabaría con la inflación, estimularía el crecimiento y corregiría las fallas de las administraciones anteriores. Pero la realidad ha sido demolidora. En lugar de arreglar los problemas, los ha agravado hasta un punto insostenible. Tanto es así, que el Banco de Inglaterra ha hecho algo inédito. Rompe la norma no escrita de neutralidad y, en un movimiento sin precedentes, deja claro que no confían en la gestión de Reeves. Figuras clave dentro del banco, tanto en privado como públicamente, han expresado su preocupación sobre las políticas económicas de la Chancellor. Y no son comentarios ligeros. Se habla de una Chancellor fuera de su capacidad, de una persona tomando decisiones financieras imprudentes que están empujando al país a una crisis de proporciones catastróficas. Los signos de alarma llevan meses acumulándose. Pero ahora las cifras hablan por sí solas. El Banco de Inglaterra ha reducido drásticamente sus previsiones de crecimiento para 2025. En apenas 3 meses, la proyección ha caído de un 1.55% a un 0.75%. Un desplome brutal que confirma lo que todos temían. La economía británica se está estancando. Y con ello, las esperanzas de millones de ciudadanos que creerán en las promesas laboristas. ¿Dónde están los aumentos salariales que garantizó Reeves? ¿Dónde está la expansión del empleo y las oportunidades para los británicos? En lugar de todo esto, la economía está colapsando, la inversión se está evaporando y la confianza en el futuro del país se encuentra bajo mínimos. Aún hay más. El Banco de Inglaterra también ha lanzado una advertencia alarmante sobre la inflación. Se suponía que esta era la gran prioridad de Reeves. Sin embargo, las previsiones indican que lejos de controlarse, la inflación volverá a subir y alcanzará el 3.7% este verano. Un golpe letal para los británicos, que ven como los precios de los bienes básicos siguen aumentando mientras sus salarios no consiguen ponerse al día. Los mercados están reaccionando en consecuencia. La confianza empresarial se está desplomando. La libra se debilita. La bolsa tiembla. Y las empresas que inicialmente apostaron por la estabilidad laborista están retirando sus inversiones ante el caos que se avecina. La política de crecimiento de Reeves ha perdido una estrategia prometedora a convertirse en una espiral de muerte económica. Pero lo más sorprendente es la actitud de Starmer. Se niega a reaccionar. Sigue protegiendo a Reeves a pesar del evidente fracaso de sus políticas. Que oculta su empecinamiento en mantenerla en el cargo. Es simplemente arrogancia o hay algo más profundo que no quieren que sepamos. Arquias donde entra en juego otro escándalo que puede explicar esta lealtad ciega. El despilfarro en gasto de asilo. UN informe reciente ha sacado a la luz que el gobierno británico ha gastado la astronómica cifra de 6.6 mil millones de libras en programas de apoyo a solicitantes de asilo. No en su procesamiento. No en deportaciones. Solo en programas de apoyo. Y quien estuvo detrás de estas aprobaciones. Nada menos que Rachel Reeves. Mientras las familias británicas son exprimidas con impuestos más altos, hipotecas por las nubes y servicios públicos en declive, el gobierno de Starmer encontró un pozo sin fondo de dinero para gastar en estos programas. El escándalo explotó de inmediato. Durante meses, el Partido Laborista había repetido incansablemente que no había dinero. No había dinero para recortar impuestos. No había dinero para contratar más policías. No había dinero para mejorar el NHS. Pero si había dinero para esto. La indignación pública ha sido inmediata y devastadora. No solo ha provocado la ira de la oposición, sino que dentro del propio Partido Laborista han empezado a surgir gritos. Reeves no solo está perdiendo la confianza del Banco de Inglaterra o de los votantes, sino también la de su propio partido. Y esto coloca a Starmer en una situación imposible. Si destituye a Reeves, se admite que su política económica ha fracasado. Pero si la mantiene, arriesga la credibilidad de todo su gobierno y una implosión total en los mercados financieros. Pero hay algo aún más inquietante. El Banco de Inglaterra no emite advertencias a la ligera. Si han dado paso, es porque los mercados y no confían en es gobierno. La gran pregunta ahora es si Starmer escuchará antes de que sea demasiado tarde. Si sigue protegiendo a Reeves, si se niega a reconocer que su estrategia económica está fracasando, entonces se expone a la mayor crisis política de su liderazgo. Los inversores han comenzado a retirar su dinero. La libra sigue cayendo. Las empresas británicas están alertando sobre el desastre inminente. Lo peor de todo es que esto no es un simple baque económico. Es un colapso total que está completamente anunciado. Reeves ha creado un ambiente financiero tóxico en el Reino Unido. Su política de gasto descontrolado y subidas de impuestos ha ahuyentado a los inversores y ha socavado la confianza en la economía británica. Sus planes para un crecimiento sostenible han sido una ilusión. Su gestión de la inflación, un rotundo fracaso. Y mientras tanto, Starmer sigue apostando por ella, como si no viera la catástrofe que se avecina. Pero la historia ha demostrado una y otra vez que los mercados no esperan a que los políticos reaccionen. Y cuando el impacto de esta crisis golpea con toda su fuerza las familias británicas, ningún discurso de Starmer podrá salvar a Reeves ni a su gobierno. El colapso está en marcha, y el Partido Laborista no tiene un plan para evitarlo. La pregunta no es si Reeves quiera. La pregunta es cuánto tiempo más Starmer podrá resistir antes de que su propio gobierno se derrumbe con ella. Rachel Reeves is facing the most humiliating moment of her career, and it's not coming from the opposition. It's coming from the very institution meant to uphold economic stability in the United Kingdom. The Bank of England has delivered a devastating verdict. They no longer trust her leadership. This isn't just a subtle critique or a quiet murmur of discontent. It's a full-blown alarm bell ringing at the heart of Britain's financial system. For months, warning signs have been flashing red. The UK economy is stagnating, businesses are pulling back, and inflation is far from under control. But now, the Bank of England has made it official. Under Reeves, Britain is heading for disaster. Growth forecasts for 2025 have been slashed from 1.55% to a pathetic 0.75%. A staggering decline that confirms what many feared: Reeves' economic policies are failing, and failing fast. And yet, Keir Starmer refuses to act. He continues to shield Reeves from the growing chorus of criticism, standing by her despite the collapse unfolding before his eyes. The question is, why? What is he so desperate to protect? Reeves was supposed to be Labour's economic mastermind. She promised to bring stability, to restore trust in Britain's finances, to undo the supposed damage of previous governments. Instead, she has plunged the country into deeper uncertainty. Businesses, once hopeful about a Labour government, are now withdrawing their investments, spooked by Reeves' erratic policies and economic mismanagement. The pound is weakening, market confidence is crumbling, and now even Labour's most loyal supporters are starting to question whether Starmer's team is fit to govern. And here's where things go from bad to worse. The Bank of England isn't just questioning Reeves' competence, they're outright signalling that they no longer believe she is capable of steering the economy in the right direction. This is an institution that does not make public statements lightly. If they are taking this step, it means the crisis is far more severe than Labour wants to admit. And let's talk about inflation. Reeves claimed that tackling rising prices was her top priority. She insisted that under Labour, inflation would be brought under control. Yet, the Bank of England now warns that inflation is set to surge again, hitting 3.7% by summer. This is not just bad news, it's catastrophic. Rising costs will hit working families the hardest. Mortgage rates are already skyrocketing. Everyday goods are becoming unaffordable. And the government's response? Silence. This government promised economic responsibility, yet they are actively making life harder for millions. People are struggling to pay their bills, small businesses are on the verge of collapse, and investor confidence is plummeting. And Reeves, instead of reversing course, she doubles down on the very policies dragging Britain to the brink. But here's the real scandal: the asylum spending crisis. A bombshell report has revealed that while Reeves and Starmer have been telling the British public that there is no money for tax cuts, no money for increased police recruitment, no money for NHS expansion, somehow, there was £6.6 billion available for asylum support schemes. Not processing. Not deportations. Just support programs. How does the government justify this? How does Labour stand before struggling British families, who are being crushed under higher taxes and rising living costs, and tell them that there isn't enough money to help them, yet billions are being quietly funneled elsewhere? Where is the accountability? Where is the outrage? This revelation has sent shockwaves through Westminster. The public backlash has been immediate and ferocious. Labour spent months insisting that economic sacrifices had to be made, that tough decisions were necessary. They claimed the cupboard was bare. But the moment asylum spending came into question, suddenly the money was flowing freely. Even within Labour's own ranks, tensions are rising. Reeves isn't just facing criticism from the opposition, she is losing the confidence of her own party. Labour insiders are panicking. They know that this scandal is toxic. They know that it is enraging voters. And yet, Starmer refuses to act. He refuses to acknowledge the growing unrest, the failing economy, the backlash that is only intensifying. And this puts him in an impossible position. If he fires Reeves, it will be seen as an admission of failure, proof that Labour's entire economic strategy has collapsed. But if he keeps defending her, he risks his own credibility, and perhaps even his government. The Bank of England's warning was just the beginning. The financial markets are already responding. Investors are pulling out, the stock market is showing signs of strain, and international confidence in the UK economy is at an all-time low. And the simple truth is this: markets do not wait for politicians to wake up. If Labour refuses to change course, the financial sector will take action for them. We are already seeing businesses preparing for the worst. Many are slashing jobs, cutting expansion plans, and looking at moving operations elsewhere because they no longer trust Labour to provide economic stability. This is a government that campaigned on restoring trust in the economy, and yet, in just a matter of months, they have destroyed it. But the most damning question remains: why is Starmer still protecting Reeves? This is where the political intrigue deepens. Logic would suggest that, after an economic failure of this scale, after a public humiliation from the country's most powerful financial institution, Reeves should be gone. But instead, Starmer is standing by her, refusing to let go. Is it arrogance? A refusal to admit that his first major cabinet appointment was a catastrophic mistake? Or is there something deeper at play, an internal Labour crisis that the public hasn't been told about? There are whispers in Westminster that Starmer is trapped. That he knows Reeves is a disaster but can't remove her because of the power dynamics within Labour. If he fires her, he risks a mutiny from Labour's economic team, many of whom are just as ideologically committed to these disastrous policies as she is. If he keeps her, he risks economic ruin and a full-scale market rebellion. Either way, the cracks in Labour's foundations are growing, and Starmer is running out of time to fix them. This isn't just about one Chancellor anymore. This is about the survival of the Labour government itself. If Starmer continues to choose loyalty to Reeves over the economic stability of the country, the consequences will be devastating. The Bank of England has fired its warning shot. The markets are reacting. The British public is furious. And yet, Labour continues to pretend that nothing is wrong. But the facts don't lie. The financial collapse is coming. And Starmer is completely unprepared for what happens next. The scandal that has erupted over asylum spending is not just another misstep. It is a political earthquake shaking the very foundations of the Labour government. And at the centre of it all, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor who, while British families are drowning under rising taxes, soaring mortgage rates, and a crumbling public sector, somehow managed to find billions of pounds to funnel into asylum seeker support schemes. Not towards processing, not towards deportations, just pure, unchecked expenditure on support programs alone. Where is the accountability? Where is the outrage? How does a government that has spent months lecturing struggling families on fiscal responsibility explain this? For weeks, Labour has repeated the same tired excuses. There is no money for tax cuts, no money for police recruitment, no money to expand the NHS. And yet, when it comes to asylum spending, the cash flows without restriction. This revelation changed everything. When the British public saw the numbers, the backlash was immediate and brutal. The very people Labour promised to help, the working class, the small business owners, the pensioners, are now the ones being squeezed the hardest while the government continues to throw billions at policies that do nothing to benefit them. The hypocrisy is astonishing. And it's not just the opposition that is enraged. For the first time, even Labour MPs are panicking. Rachel Reeves is no longer just facing external criticism. She is losing the confidence of her own party. The Bank of England has already signalled that it does not trust her leadership, and now the asylum spending scandal refuses to die down. The pressure is mounting, and Starmer is running out of options. But here's where things become truly dangerous for the Labour government. Keir Starmer is stuck in an impossible position. If he fires Reeves, it will be seen as an admission of total economic failure, a humiliating confession that Labour's fiscal policies are collapsing before our very eyes. But if he continues to defend her, he risks his own credibility, and possibly the implosion of his entire government. And make no mistake, this is no ordinary controversy. The sheer scale of this financial mismanagement is what makes it so damning. £6.6 billion spent on asylum support while British families are told to tighten their belts. A government that claims to prioritise economic recovery yet continues to squander taxpayers' money without restraint. The public will not forget this. And the timing couldn't be worse. Labour was supposed to be riding a wave of political dominance, cementing its reputation as the grown-ups who would fix the economy after years of perceived Tory mismanagement. Instead, they have walked into a full-scale economic disaster of their own making. The cracks are already showing. The latest polling data suggests Labour's approval ratings are beginning to slip. Meanwhile, the Conservative opposition, battered and weakened after years of infighting, now sees an opening, a chance to expose Labour's economic incompetence and regain lost ground. And Reform UK? They are gaining traction, capitalising on the public's growing anger over asylum policies that seem to prioritise everyone except the British taxpayer. The media, too, is beginning to turn. For months, Labour enjoyed the protection of friendly outlets eager to spin Rachel Reeves as an economic mastermind. But now, the headlines are changing. Analysts who once praised Labour's fiscal discipline are now questioning whether Reeves has any control over the economy at all. And if Labour thought they could contain this crisis, they were wrong. The anger is not just simmering, it is boiling over. Business owners who feel betrayed by Labour's economic policies are speaking out. Pensioners whose savings are being eroded by inflation and reckless spending are voicing their anger. Young professionals, who were promised better housing opportunities, are watching their dreams slip away as mortgage rates soar and affordability plummets. Labour promised a government of economic responsibility. Instead, They have delivered a government of fiscal recklessness, hypocrisy, and political cowardice. And Starmer's silence? Deafening. What makes this even more remarkable is that Starmer could, in theory, take action. He could remove Reeves, attempt to course-correct, and restore at least some confidence in Labour's ability to govern. But he won't. Why? Because Reeves is not just any Chancellor. She is his Chancellor, the one he handpicked, the one he has spent months defending as the cornerstone of Labour's economic plan. To admit that she has failed is to admit that he has failed too. And now, Starmer finds himself trapped. The financial sector is losing confidence. International investors are pulling back, wary of Labour's unpredictable and reckless fiscal policies. The European Union, which Reeves and Starmer had hoped to court as an economic partner, is instead treating Britain as an unreliable market. The United States is reportedly concerned about the UK's economic direction, and even China, which Labour naively believed would become a strategic ally, is exploiting Britain's weakness for its own benefit. This is no longer just a domestic issue. Reeves' failures are damaging Britain's standing on the world stage. And so, the question is no longer whether Reeves can recover. Her credibility is already destroyed. The real question is how long Starmer is willing to risk his own reputation to protect her. Every single day that she remains in power is another day that Labour's economic catastrophe deepens. But Starmer refuses to see it. He is clinging to a sinking ship, hoping that somehow, by sheer political will, he can keep it afloat. But history has shown that markets do not wait for politicians to wake up. Business leaders, already wary of Labour's tax hikes and anti-growth rhetoric, are making their own decisions. Some are relocating. Others are delaying hiring. Some are even preparing for an outright financial downturn, because they simply do not trust this government. And when Labour inevitably feels the full force of this economic collapse, no amount of media spin or political distraction will be able to save them. The public can see the truth. They know that Reeves has no real plan, just empty rhetoric and failed policies. They know that Starmer is too weak to act. And they know that this government is out of its depth. The reckoning is coming. And if Starmer doesn't act soon, it will not just be Rachel Reeves who pays the price. His entire government will fall with her. The Bank of England does not issue warnings lightly. When an institution of this magnitude signals that it no longer trusts the Chancellor, it does not just indicate concern, it signals crisis. And make no mistake, this is not just a routine disagreement over policy. This is a direct challenge to the economic credibility of the Labour government. When financial leaders start bypassing Rachel Reeves entirely, when they begin taking emergency measures to stabilise the economy without her involvement, the message is unmistakable. The markets no longer trust this government. And if the financial sector doesn't trust them, why should the British public? For months, Reeves and Starmer have insisted that Labour is the party of economic responsibility. They've told us that under their leadership, Britain would return to stability, that years of conservative mismanagement would be undone, that prosperity was just around the corner. But the numbers tell a very different story. The UK economy is not recovering, it's shrinking. The so-called Labour recovery has turned out to be nothing more than smoke and mirrors, a carefully packaged illusion that is now collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. Investors are pulling their money out. The pound is weakening. British businesses, many of whom had cautiously welcomed a Labour government, are now sounding the alarm. The economic optimism that Labour promised has vanished, replaced by the grim reality of stagnation, instability, and a growing loss of confidence. Reeves' policies, reckless spending, punitive tax hikes, and an unrelenting hostility towards business have poisoned the investment climate. Capital is fleeing. Growth is evaporating. And the warning signs are flashing bright red. But what makes this crisis all the more damning is that it was entirely predictable. The writing was on the wall from the moment Reeves took office. Labour's economic strategy, if it could even be called that, has been a disaster from day one. The excessive public spending, the relentless tax increases, the suffocating regulatory burdens on businesses, these were never policies designed for growth. They were ideological statements, political gestures masquerading as governance, a government more concerned with posturing than with results. And now, the consequences are unfolding in real time. Starmer faces the biggest test of his leadership. The evidence is undeniable. The public knows it. The markets know it. Even members of his own party are starting to whisper the unthinkable: Reeves has to go. But will Starmer finally act? Or will he continue to shield her, even as her economic policies drag the UK deeper into crisis? His silence so far has been deafening. The Bank of England has openly questioned Labour's handling of the economy. Business leaders are warning of a collapse in investment. The opposition is circling, sensing political blood in the water. And yet, Starmer refuses to act. And what does that tell us? What does it reveal about his priorities, about his judgment, about his ability to lead? If he cannot make the tough decisions now, if he cannot recognize that Reeves is a liability, then how can he possibly be trusted to navigate Britain through the turbulent economic waters ahead? The reality is that Starmer is risking everything: his credibility, his authority, even his government, by standing by Reeves. And why? Is it stubbornness? A refusal to admit that his first major cabinet appointment was a catastrophic mistake? Or is it something deeper, a fundamental weakness in his leadership that prevents him from taking decisive action? Because right now, Labour's economic failures are not just damaging Britain's financial stability, they are putting Starmer's entire government at risk. The cracks are widening. The pressure is mounting. And if he does not act soon, it will not be Reeves alone who pays the price. History has shown that financial markets do not wait for politicians to wake up. They do not tolerate dithering. Investors make decisions based on confidence, based on trust, based on leadership. And under Reeves, those things have vanished. Labour campaigned on a platform of economic competence, yet their first months in power have been defined by failure, uncertainty, and crisis. International investors are already looking elsewhere. Britain, once seen as a stable, reliable economy, is now being viewed as a risk. The European Union, which Labour had hoped to court as an economic ally, is instead treating Britain with growing skepticism. The United States, once seen as a key partner in global trade, is reportedly concerned about Britain's financial trajectory. Even China, a country Labour naively believed could be an economic partner, is taking advantage of Britain's growing economic weakness. And so, the question is no longer whether Reeves can recover, because her credibility is already destroyed. The real question is how much longer Starmer is willing to risk his own leadership to protect her. Every day that she remains in office, the situation worsens. The economy deteriorates. Market confidence collapses. And Starmer's grip on power weakens. He is making a fatal mistake, the same mistake so many leaders before him have made. He believes that by ignoring the crisis, by pretending it doesn't exist, by refusing to acknowledge reality, he can somehow ride out the storm. But the markets do not wait. The economy does not pause for political convenience. And when the collapse comes, it will be swift, brutal, and unforgiving. The financial sector has lost patience. Business leaders, once willing to give Labour the benefit of the doubt, are preparing for the worst. Major companies are scaling back their investments. Small businesses are struggling to stay afloat. And workers, the very people Labour claims to represent, are the ones suffering the most. Wages are stagnating. Prices are rising. Mortgage rates are becoming unmanageable. And all the while, Reeves continues to insist that Labour's plan is working. It is delusional. It is reckless. And it is dangerous. Labour was handed a golden opportunity. After years of conservative infighting and political instability, they had a chance to prove themselves. They had a chance to show that they were capable of governing, capable of delivering prosperity, capable of bringing stability back to Britain. Instead, they have thrown it all away. And now, as the economy crumbles, as Labour's credibility disintegrates, as the public begins to turn against them, Starmer is faced with a choice. He can continue protecting Reeves, continue pretending that everything is fine, continue allowing Britain's economy to spiral further into disaster. Or he can finally accept reality. He can remove Reeves, acknowledge the failure, and attempt to salvage what remains of his government's credibility. But here's the truth: he won't. Because to do so would mean admitting that Labour's economic plan was flawed from the start. It would mean admitting that the Bank of England was right, that the financial markets were right, that the investors who fled were right. It would mean conceding that Labour's entire economic strategy has failed. And so, he will do nothing. He will cling to Reeves. He will continue to insist that Labour's plan is working. He will ignore the warning signs, dismiss the growing criticism, and hope that somehow, against all odds, the crisis will resolve itself. But it won't. Because economic collapse does not wait for political stubbornness. And when the reckoning comes, it will not just be Rachel Reeves who falls. It will be Keir Starmer. It will be the Labour government. And it will be the entire political establishment that allowed this disaster to unfold.